Coming up on Global Business, fresh numbers from China's central bank shows yuan-denominated loans rose by nearly 346 billion yuan, or over 48 billion US dollars in July. China's Ministry of Commerce releases a report criticizing Washington's compliance with its WTO obligations. And U.S. producer prices rise by 0.3% in July as the cost of services rebound. However, the overall trend still shows a moderation in inflationary pressures. Welcome everyone to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wang in Beijing. First up, fresh data from the People's Bank of China shows that newly added total social financing, a measure of funds the real economy receives from the financial system, came in at over 528 billion yuan in July. That's lower than what the markets expected. New yuan loans in July came in at 346 billion yuan. Outstanding yuan loans stood at over 16 trillion yuan. Meanwhile, the Chinese central bank continued to inject liquidity into the money market, with the broad money, or M2 supply, reaching nearly 285.4 trillion yuan. That's up over 10.7% on a yearly basis. For more on China's latest financial data, I want to bring in Chu Qiang, a research fellow at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Chu Qiang, welcome to the program. So July is not usually a strong month for credit growth here in China, and June we already saw credit growth exceeding market expectations. So what's your overall take on China's July total social financing and new yuan loan numbers?
Well, I think the market has been over-worrying about the situation. Number one, you have to understand, in China we have borrowing calendar because many enterprises and also banks, they want to, move all their credit in the first half of the year. So by the end is the end of June. That's a reason why in many Junes, the outstanding of the credit or the borrowing are happening in a very, very large bulk number. But the next month, which is July, are always have a sharp decrease. It happens basically every year, usually cut by half. It's because many banks want to pre-approve their loans in the first half of the year. That's for the first thing. And second thing, we've been seeing that expectations are still weak. People need confidence to, for the second half of the year. But still, this is actually within our analysis expectation. Because if you take a look at the total number, the sheer number in the first 7 months, you will find out actually our sheer borrowing number is still more than 9% up than 2022 and 2021. So I'm thinking that still the sheer number of the economic size are still expanding. So people are worrying too much about it. Still, we need to really pay attention to people's expectation and confidence in the second half of the year. Because if it's dropping too fast or if it's recovered too slow, it will affect what we're going to happen in the end of this year and affecting people's confidence in the coming year.
So, Chu Qiang, how do you then see China balancing its prudent monetary policy and efforts to consolidate its economic recovery?
Well, I think Chinese monetary policy right now is very, very prudential. Actually, we have two kinds of risks which probably are going to affect us. One is if we loosen up our monetary policy, probably you're going to see, price pressures, which is inflation and also asset bubbles. But right now for China, you can have a very clear observation. This is not a thing. The price index is very, very stable. The assets price is very, very stable. So which left us with another risk, which is coming out of China. That is the strong dollars, which can cause capital outflow. So that depends on the Federal Reserve's policy, but depends on what we have been observing recently. The CPI and the PPI in America are rather mild and tender. So I think by that kind of situation, Federal Reserve are probably going to slow down their paces of hiking up the interest rate, which will give Chinese monetary authority more of the leeway to manage the monetary policy inside of China to soothe the economic circle and also help to improve the situation.
So overall, then, what's your outlook on China's credit growth going forward as the country works to strengthen its recovery?
Well, China has been doing a lot of things. For example, we've been working on the asset swap. For example, we can switch the current, the high interest rate house mortgages into the lower one. And also the central government is having several meetings to work on the outstanding, the credit borrowed by the property companies and also to solve the debt issues recently. And I think, according to the current, Chinese borrowing data, I think there's one thing we need to be confirmed. That is, in the past several years, people are stressing that we've been driven too much, according to the debt that we've been borrowing to our economy. But right now, China still can maintain more than 5% of the economic growth, but the debt size has been slowing down. Well, previously you think this is a problem. Now you see the problem is been solving, and the economy can still maintain its speed. So I think we still are making some progress.
All right, we're going to leave it there on this topic. Chu Qiao, many thanks for your thoughts on this. Stay with us. We're going to come back to you in just a moment. Well, on Thursday, both the Shanghai and Shenzhen exchanges announced that they would improve trading systems and optimize trading supervision and shorten the release time for the development of non-broad-based stock index products. Under the upgraded regulations, the number of securities listed on these two exchanges, funds and other securities to be declared, is changed to 100 shares and increased by 1 share. At the end of the bidding, investors now can buy and sell shares at the closing price through the closing pricing order, increasing flexibility. Meanwhile, new trading systems are being used to promote green industry development, including the Yellow River Basin Water Rights Trading Platform, which was officially launched on Thursday. Our Xu Yi has more.
The Yellow River is an important ecological barrier and economic zone in China. In recent years, the Chinese government has been promoting green industrial transformation of the basin. The Yellow River Water Rights Trading Platform is one of the main measures. Water rights trading is based on water rights holders, who can be water associations, companies, and individual users. All the holders can qualify to buy and sell water rights. The function of the exchange is to turn water rights into a liquid resource with market value. Through the market mechanism, water rights holders with low efficiency can be encouraged to conserve water by considering the cost of use. With the newly launched water rights trading system, the Yellow River Basin could achieve greater efficiency in its use of water resources, promoting the development of the ecosystem and green economy in China.
And in other headlines we're tracking here in China, the China Securities Regulatory Commission and the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission have reached consensus on promoting the inclusion of bulk trading in the connectivity mechanism. In response to recent extreme weather across the country, including rainy and floods, the Emergency Management Department of China's Ministry of Finance has allocated nearly 1.5 billion yuan in additional funds for natural disaster relief. And the Guangzhou government will promote the upgraded transformation of the private economy in 4 major sectors, namely industrialization, agriculture, urbanization, and informatization. It's still to come here on Global Business. China's Ministry of Commerce releases a report criticizing Washington's compliance with its WTO obligations.
Climate change, economic uncertainty, and food insecurity. As the world faces multiple challenges, heads of state of BRICS nations and 55 African countries meet in South Africa with a common goal to promote multilateralism and sustainable development. CGTN will bring you in-depth reports and comprehensive analysis on one of the largest gatherings of developing countries. BRICS Summit 2023. Building an inclusive world.
Well, China is calling the United States a destroyer of the multilateral trading system, as well as a double standard manipulator of industrial policies, in its new report detailing how Washington has failed to comply with the rules of the World Trade Organization.
China's Ministry of Commerce released its 2023 report on WTO compliance of the United States on Friday. The report lists 11 areas where Washington could impact fair trade. They include the tariff and non-tariff barriers such as the Section 232 Act that allows the U.S. to initiate investigations on imports over national security concerns, and also multiple executive orders that prohibit Chinese telecom companies from sourcing equipment in America.
The report notes subsidies the U.S. government frequently provide to support its various domestic industries. It points out that certain subsidy programs were contingent upon the use of domestic products or the prohibition on procuring foreign products. The report also accuses the U.S. of restricting the export of Chinese products via technical measures, such as changing import standards for air conditioners, aviation equipment, and seafood. Chinese authorities believe such acts are contrary to the principles in the Technical Barriers to Trade Agreement.
And the Chinese Ministry of Commerce said its report on U.S. WTO compliance was based on facts at a press conference on Friday, adding that the purpose of this report was to call on the U.S. to safeguard the multilateral trade system. So let's get more on this report and bring in Professor Liu Baocheng, Dean at the Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics. Professor Liu, so what's your overall take on this latest U.S. WTO compliance report released by China?
Well, I think the report is factual and also logical. It does not only raise the voice from China, but a whole majority of the WTO members who have been, impaired or even victimized by the United States. For one, is that the U.S. is trying to ignore the WTO rules that they helped to create, and now they feel that they are uncomfortable, and they accuse the WTO is there to overstep into the U.S. sovereignty by extending their own list of export control. And this will hurt the global economy, not only China. And the other is that the recent move, particularly since the Trump administration, that continued by the Joe Biden administration, that they become more and more ethnocentric and inward-looking, and by having more of the import substitutions through the content requirement, sourcing from the United States. This is really direct violation of the WTO rules in terms of national treatment and fair trade among all members, and particularly when they have really impaired the appellate system. They feel that the rule-based a trading system on a global basis is not really very much in favor of the short-term interests of the United States. So they are really bringing the whole global economy into a more of the power-based economy, which is really a jungle law, and that is really a disruptive impact, and also this is going to have a long-lasting negative impact on the rehabilitation and recovery of the global economy.
Professor Liu, you mentioned the appellate body of the WTO. I want to get more on that because that report says the U.S. undermines the WTO dispute settlement mechanism by blocking appointments of new appellate body members since 2017, even as vacancies for that body arise. So this body is known as the crown jewel of the WTO because it safeguards the implementation of WTO rules with its binding recommendations and rulings. So why do you think the U.S. continues to reject new appointments to this body, even though a majority of WTO members actually support the early launch of this process of bringing new people into the appellate body?
You are very right, because the WTO is so creative and innovative, and it shapes its own distinction among all the trading blocs simply because it has built the DSP system, the dispute settlement body, in which some of the complaints can be really resolved through the fair and the rational decision based on the factual investigation, and also based on the rules that the 164 countries can really abide by. But now, with the rupture of such a body actually since 2019, supposedly there should be 7 members sitting on the appellate body, but now this is totally vacant, and because the U.S. has a reserve of 1 seat. At least 1 seat within the appellate body. So by blocking the appointment of a judge, and this really paralyzed the whole operation. And the reason is that they feel that they are not really getting much of the favor, particularly with the rise of the new emerging economies like China and many other countries. And then they feel that they are still maintaining the upper hand in the technology and also in their own conception power. So they use the bluff method instead of following the rules that they helped really to create. And so this is really a very myopic approach, and this will make the global economy on a free reading basis based on the power, and more of the retaliation will follow. And plus that this is going to directly hurt the U.S. economy because China and many other countries are growing in consensus towards such a sort of a move, and more of the alternatives are also being created to solve the disputes without the involvement of the United States. So their so-called leadership, or really their hegemony, is being invaded by their own action. So this is something that can be corrected, hopefully by the new administration. But Joe Biden has really disappointed the more than 100 of the WTO members by continuing the legacy which was left over by the Trump administration. So therefore, the rest of members should see the true picture, and this report helped to disclose some of the hidden agenda of the United States, and also, and put the U.S. on a legal basis. This is really I should say, a moral type of court to really to tell the whole world that there are certain actions that we need to take together against the disruption and against the U.S. economy, the hegemony.
All right, we'll leave it there. Many thanks for insights on this, Professor Liu Baocheng, Dean at the Center for International Business Ethics at UIBE. Thank you. Well, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is currently on a three-nation tour of Southeast Asia. Now, following his Singapore visit, he has now arrived in Penang, Malaysia. Wang Yi held talks with his Malaysian counterparts, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and Foreign Minister Zambry Abdul Kadir. CGTN's correspondent Ryan Meltzer brings us the latest on the ground.
Clearly, there was plenty to discuss, and that's despite the fact that Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim had asked Wang Yi to fly up here to Penang to meet him and his government ministers, because there are 6 state elections, crucial state elections happening here tomorrow, and he was on the campaign trail here in Penang. But clearly he took a great deal of time, and the government ministers took a great deal of time to discuss matters with Wang Yi, given how important China is. And afterwards, after quite a lengthy meeting between Anwar and Wang Yi, some more government ministers joined that meeting before a one-on-one bilateral meeting between Wang Yi and Malaysia's foreign minister. Now, we heard from Anwar Ibrahim after his meeting, and he talked about the important significance of the visit, with Wang Yi not only being foreign minister but also a senior member of China's Politburo, and about the rapport that Wang Yi already enjoys with Anwar and with many of his ministers, and how much easier that makes dialogue. So they were able to broach obvious topics such as trade and investment, increasing people-to-people ties, more students going between the two countries, expanding R&D, and furthermore, this is the 10th anniversary of the two countries forging a comprehensive strategic partnership, and it's ahead of next year, the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries. So plenty to discuss on building ties, strengthening ties further.
And China is emerging as a leading force in global tourism. New data shows a significant surge in Chinese travelers exploring Asian destinations, with Indonesia standing out as a summer favorite. CGTN's Silkina Aluwalia has more from Jakarta.
Chinese tourists are topping the list of international visitors in Indonesia. This growing number is presenting economic opportunities for Indonesia, though experts say the potential is not yet being fully realized.
Especially for some top tourist destinations, they provide some positive contributions to the local economy as well. But I think there is still room for improvement to really ensure how the arrival of Chinese tourists in Indonesia contribute as well to large number of stakeholders in the local communities.
Lalisang says traveling to other parts of Asia is now becoming a trend for Chinese tourists, whereas previously they would prefer the United States or European cities. Indonesia is an affordable country for them, and they visit to experience more than just the country's warm hospitality.
Indonesia is home to some of the world's most beautiful natures, and experts say Chinese tourists come to the country for exactly that, to experience Indonesia's beautiful beaches, tropical forests, and mountains.
Another popular spot in Jakarta is the city's famous Chinatown. Chinese tourists are curious. They visit Chinatown to see how Indonesians are blending authentic Chinese culture with a unique local touch, like in the Pancoran Peak area.
We have clear data that shows the majority of international tourists that come here are from China. We saw a massive increase during the Chinese New Year. There was a video that went viral on Weibo that shows celebrations for Lunar New Year here and how it is so similar to China. After that, the tourists have been coming in significant numbers.
It's not just about sightseeing for the Chinese tourists. They are on a quest for authentic experiences, from learning about traditional cultures to diving deep into pristine waters. All of that has significant economic benefits for Indonesia. Silkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
According to data from a number of travel platforms, China's outbound travel market is expected to peak during the National Day holiday in October. This comes after the Ministry of Culture and Tourism's announcement on Thursday that another 78 destination countries are approved for resuming outbound group tours. That expands the total number of countries for outbound group travel to 138. Subsequently, user inquiries under the travel platform's outbound product page surged, among which Japan and South Korea are highly popular. Industry insiders said outbound tourism can play a greater siphon effect, bringing new and huge recovery space to the tourism industry. And up next, here on Global Business. U.S. producer prices rise by 0.3% in July as the cost of services rebound. However, the overall trend of PPI still showing a moderation in inflationary pressures.
ChatGPT, at the forefront of technological advancement, stands as a beacon of innovation, shaping the global tech landscape and enhancing lives.
Language model is a system that studies very large number of text written by humans.
China's relentless pursuit of innovation aims to establish an innovation hub that amplifies its journey towards high-quality development. Exploring the full potential of the technological revolution, China is charting new territories.
I respect China has come up with amazing technology in the last 10 years. I think China is already an innovation powerhouse.
As successive waves of generative AI emerge, humanity's role in technology management evolves. ChatGPT is a driving force in catalyzing digital transformation across all aspects of life.
Why GPT can produce such good sentences? It's a little bit of a mystery.
Witness the transformation firsthand, only on BizTalk, only on CGTN.
Right, turning now to the U.S. economy, where the U.S. Labor Department has just released the latest producer price index. The PPI, which gauges the costs that goods and services producers receive for their products, increased by 0.3% on a monthly basis in July. The rebound in the U.S. services sector in July led to higher prices for producers. Data for June was revised down to show PPI unchanged for that month. On a year-over-year basis, headline PPI was up 0.8%. And as the government reported on Thursday, a modest rise in consumer prices in July reinforced expectations that the Federal Reserve could leave interest rates unchanged next month. And for more on the U.S. economy, I want to bring back Chu Qiang, research fellow at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Chu Qiang, so I want to get your overall take on the U.S. July PPI numbers rising by 0.3% in July on a monthly basis, but up 0.8% on a yearly basis. That's slightly higher than forecasts for a rise of 0.7%. And of course, what producer prices pay can translate into what consumer prices pay as well. And that could have implications for what the Fed does later on.
Oh, yes. Like we just discussed, basically in the past few months, America's CPI or inflation rate can be stable, while mild changing, as we mentioned. But this number, well, generally was our expectation, but what we didn't expect it's going to be a little bit, even a little lower further than that. For example, 0.1% lower than that, maybe, but now it's just oppositely higher than that. And that can be a problem because everybody knows we have some lagging behind effect in a monetary policy. Recently been observing that in India, they've been boycotting, they've been sanctioned the export of their rices. And in Bangladesh, the same, Thailand, Vietnam, similarly, and also been seeing the oil prices going up already this month. So if it goes like we expected, maybe in the next month, in September, the overall food prices and energy prices probably will go back up again. And plus, America's PPI is going up, as we just mentioned. PPI can be translated later into CPI. So maybe next month or next month, in America, the overall price index can be much higher than this month. So whether the Federal Reserve will halt on their hike up in interest rate or not can be a question.
Right, so we had quite a rapid rise in interest rates over in the U.S., Chu Qiang, from a low for long environment to a 500+ basis point rise in quite a short amount of time. So, like you said, monetary policy has a lagged effect. Do you expect the U.S. economy then to have a soft landing, stagflation, or in other words, elevated inflation and slower growth, or a recession?
Well, this is really hard to say. Actually, this has become a very, very hot topic in academic society. Every scientist, economist are discussing about this. Well, according to the hindsight, according to the history, in a Paul Volcker's period of time, we've been observing the inflation can be really, really stubborn. When everybody think, okay, when we really have like 18% of interest rate, that's really very dramatic rise in interest rate back in the 1980s, 18% of the interest rate. Everybody expected that the inflation would go down very quickly, and they did see that. But after a little while, it go back up again, and it lasted for a very long time. So we say that inflation can be very stubborn. It's very hard to be tamed. So I'm just a little bit worried that by this moment, everybody expecting, okay, maybe this is the moment when Federal Reserve should halt on the 5% of the interest rate. And we see already the CPI has been going mild, but maybe at the end of the year, it will go back up again. And then Federal Reserve probably is going to put in harsher plans bashing on the interest rate and inflation. So what we're going to do by that time, this still can be a question.
All right. Many thanks for your thoughts and perspectives on all of this. Chu Qiang, a research fellow at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Thank you. And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wang here in Beijing. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.